Stitch People. Welcome to the Stitch People podcast. I'm Lizzie Bean, your host and the founder of Stitch People, where our goal with cross-stitching is to inspire your personal creativity, and our goal with podcasting is to help you make some new friends while you're at it. Before I introduce today's guest, I just want to remind you all the really cool new fun stuff we have going on. So check out stitchpeople.com, check out our Instagram. We've got new subscriptions launched where we have a bunch of different styles of patterns you can choose from and get a new pattern each month within that style. We have a discount code happening through the end of the month that gets you 15% off any subscription that you start in the month of January. The discount code is good for any subscription, all the subscriptions you want to try out. You just have to subscribe by the end of January. You can find that discount code. It's a little bit of a journey. We have our end of year survey that we have sent out. Check out the link in the podcast description and fill out that survey. You will get a PDF ebook. The ebook shows all the fun things we have coming up this year, including the discount for subscriptions. So it's a little bit of a maze. Click the link in the description and take that survey and get that discount. We'd love to have you. But check out our subscriptions, our new releases, and join our free stitch along. We have a free weekly stitch along. It's just a 14 stitch by 14 stitch 1-inch square motif designed by members of the Stitch People community and other cross stitchers, designed by people like you. It's just another great way to get to know each other, and we'd love to have you join us each week, totally free. Go to stitchpeople.com/club to check it out. Enough with the announcements. I can't wait to introduce you to Krystal, Tennessee. She is today's guest, and what a delight she is. Super, super cool gal. You'll hear all about her. She's in Canada. She's a research assistant. She's a cat mom. She does all sorts of cool crafts, and it was really, really fun getting to know her. What I think is really cool is, as of the air date of this podcast, she has been a Stitch People person for just under a year, and she's been able to accomplish so much by way of her portraits and personal creativity in just that short amount of time. So get cozy, grab yourself a hot bevy on this winter day, and get to know Krystal with me. Krystal, welcome to the Stitch People podcast. Thank you so much for meeting with me today. It's a pleasure to see you. Is it super dark and gloomy where you are already, 6 p.m. on the East Coast?
It is. It's wintry. It's in the minuses, and it's in the chillier side.
Remind me where exactly you're located.
So I actually live in Montreal, but right now I'm in Mississauga, which is in Ontario, Canada.
Oh, nice. Okay.
But normally I live in a different province.
And is that province in a different time zone?
Same time zone, just a little bit further east.
I think Americans generally underestimate how big Canada is. It's like, it's like, I know in my brain it spans from like the border of Seattle to the border of like Augusta, Maine. I mean, like, I know in my head that it's that wide, but we forget how tall Canada is, and just so much space.
Second largest country in the world.
That's pretty cool. So are you born and raised Canadian? Or are you a transplant?
So I'm from Mississauga, the city that I'm in right now.
Nice. Okay, cool. Very fun. And how long have you been crafting? Tell us a little bit about that. Have you always been a crafty person?
I have been fairly crafty throughout my life, but I recently got into Stitch People in February.
Awesome.
So I saw your video on the Michael's YouTube page.
Oh, cool.
And so it was actually on my feed. I saw the little couple on the
little Valentines.
That's right, the Valentine's Day one. And I was like, oh, look, an interracial couple. And so my partner and I were an interracial couple. So I was super excited.
Awesome.
And so that's how I found out about it. And so far I've been making portraits and trying out different.
I feel like I see you all over the place on Instagram and like Sip and Stitches and the classes and stuff. And so it kind of blows my mind that you're a relatively fresh face for Stitch People. That's pretty cool. Had you cross stitched before Stitch People?
A little bit. So in high school, I first saw someone make something that was cross stitch, and I was curious about it, whether it was something I could do. So I bought one of those little kits.
Yeah.
And then there was someone in one of my classes that said they knew how to do it. So I took it into school and was like, hey, could you show me how to do this? I tried and I did it for a bit and then I set that down. And so I think about 7 years later, I picked it back up and then finished that one. And then intermittently, I would work on it. And then for a number of years, I had problems with my hands. So
Oh,
I would actually use cross stitch to check how well my hands were working. So I
oh
probably do about 10 to
wow.
20 stitches. And then, yeah, so then now I do full portraits and yeah, I have
That's
a good
pretty
time doing it.
cool. I feel like that's kind of a theme of cross stitching. It's hard when you are just perusing kits and you're looking for something. I mean, it's got to like resonate. And there's so many different styles out there. But now, I mean, compared to back in the day, like in the 90s, there were only so many styles. And now, thank goodness, with Etsy, there's so many more kits and things. But it's hard to find something that you totally love. And I think I just love that your story's like, hey, that's like me and my husband. And it's like that immediate personal spin kind of makes you feel a little more invested, maybe. At least that was kind of my experience being a hobbyist cross stitcher like you put something down, you work at it a little bit, you put it down until you have something that actually means something to you on a personal level, which is special.
Well, that first one that I had done, so I had a friend and her mom, she had dementia and a certain type of cancer, and we were going in for her treatment. I was like, oh, let me bring this with me because it's going to take a while. And then at that point, the mom was nonverbal. And
Mm.
so she looked at the cross stitch I was working on and she was able to mutter the words, that's good. And I was like, oh, I have to finish this for her. So then,
Oh,
I made it, I framed it and put her name on it. And yeah,
I
so I had
love
given that to
that.
her.
Oh, that makes me like feel bittersweet. I was going to say happy, but it's not quite happy. Like it's just heartwarming how that kind of thing can span generations, It's like our moms, our grandmas, people who are crafty in our lives know what it takes, to do something like that. So that's really special. What a great motivation.
Well, it was actually really interesting. So after I saw your video, I went online and looked at the webpage and the books. And so I was telling my mom about the book that, like your initial book, I think,
Yeah.
I forget what it's called, like how to cross stitch maybe, or how to
Oh, like the
the first
freebie,
one.
like,
No,
yeah.
the original one that you released.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Do it yourself stitch people.
That right? Yeah,
That's
yeah,
like
yeah.
like our number one. Yeah. If
So
you
I
get
was
any book, that's the one you should get. Yeah,
exactly.
totally.
So I went onto the webpage and then I was telling my mom about it. I was like, oh man, it's in the US. Do I want to get it to Canada? I'm not sure. And so I was telling her about this book. And then my mom said, well, I actually have a book. So my mom, she was orphaned in the
Oh,
60s. She was really young. And so there's one item that remains from her mom's life. And it's actually an embroidery book. And so my mom said, well, did you know that the only thing that I have from my mom is this embroidery book? I was like, oh, wait, what? So then the next time I visited my family, she brought out this book and, it's like dated circa 1919, somewhere around there. And
yeah.
so it was really cool to see that it was stitching the generations together. And, that was
Literally.
not something that I had known that my grandmother had done. And I mean, my
I
mom
love
hadn't
that.
spoken about it before. So it was really cool to hear that connection.
Wow, that's so I mean, that's when we name stitch people, I'm always like looking for symbols, and it's like stitch people's like the stitched people, and then we are the people who stitch, and then we stitch each other. It's like stitch our lives together. So like you've like ticked all the boxes,
Literally, yeah.
literally stitching generations together. Do you think your mom didn't bring it up just because like it never came up before, or like? It's an embroidery book. Is it just because it was specific and now that it was relevant was like, oh yeah, or
I
just
don't
never
think the
mentioned it?
context had really come up because I mean,
Sure.
she doesn't do embroidery, and I mean, people don't talk about it in our regular day
Yeah,
to day. So
right. I love those old books. There's a lot uploaded at various libraries and like Library of Congress and stuff because all those older books are starting to come into the public domain. And so there's all these beautiful old, motifs and embroidery and cross stitch patterns, but from, the 19th century and early 20th century. And yeah, they have some really cool stuff. Have you used the book at all? Have you used any of the motifs?
So I had looked through it, and so my mom's youngest sister, so their mom actually passed shortly after that sister was born. So for her 60th birthday, I had wanted to make my mom's sister something from that book because she doesn't have anything from her mom and didn't get a chance to know her. And so I was inspired by it, but the actual patterns were a bit outdated. So I was like, oh, well, I'll take some inspiration from it and go from there.
Perfect. I love that. So tell us about your family. Do you have anybody else crafty in your family? Do you have kids that you craft with? Do you have a partner that you make stuff with? You know, what's your family dynamic like? And is making stuff part of that, or is it just sort of a individual hobby?
So, my brother actually, he recently retrained as a carpenter. He's older than me. So
Cool.
he used to be in computer sciences and then he had an accident and he decided, you know what, I want to retrain in something that I really love. And
Yeah.
so, so he makes different types of woodworking and really enjoys that.
Awesome.
And so my partner, he actually is quite crafty. His mom has a BFA as well as his sister. And
Oh, wow.
his dad is a professor, but he does woodworking for fun. And so actually the two of us craft together. And so
I love
sometimes
that.
when I'm doing cross stitch or other projects, you know, we'll both be working on different projects and just chatting.
Ah, I love it. A couple that crafts together stays together. But it's, I mean, I say it as a joke, but it's totally true. But do you find that, like, I mean, I guess it's what you experience. I just feel like it's really, really helpful to have somebody in your life who understands the amount of skill and work and time and investment and like why we get so hyper focused on certain details and getting things just right. And that's not something that equates for everybody. So it really helps to have people in your life who can validate, you know, the expertise and the time. I think, I don't know, I think that's important to have that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we work on some things together and then we have our individual projects too. So yeah, it's
I love
really,
that. Do you do a lot in your house? Do you house projects? And for some reason in my mind's eye, I'm like, you're building things together and making stuff together. What kind of things do you like to do together?
so we've actually been on this one project for nearly a year and it should have been done a year ago. It was a first birthday present for a child that's about to turn 2, maybe in about 3 weeks. So it's a wooden puzzle. So
Cool.
and I mean, I know that you deal with puzzles as well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
We've got
we had
our little puzzle company.
so we had hand cut this puzzle and, you know, just the larger pieces for
Yeah.
children where it's like the face of the animal. And so the child's name is, actually, I don't know if they would want me to say the child's
Oh,
name.
that's okay.
But it matches the child's name
Yeah.
and certain elements of her life. So we're
I
really
love
excited
that.
to give
What
that to
kind
her.
of tools did you use? Do you have like a scroll saw or a jigsaw?
So actually, when we were at his parents' place last Christmas, they had the various woodworking tools we needed
That's
to
right. You
cut
said
it.
his father does
Yeah.
woodworking. That's great. Yeah, I mean, that's impressive. So for those who don't know, Spencer and I have been running a hand cut wind jigsaw puzzle company called the Waterford Puzzle Company, as well as Stitch People. And I mean, just mentioning it in its relevance that we spent some time around that kind of thing, and it is highly specialized. Like to be able to just sit down and cut a puzzle is not. It sounds like, oh, you'd sit down and just push a piece of wood through the saw and like go along puzzle pieces, easy peasy. It's not that. Tell us a little bit how you did it. Did you plan kind of the puzzle pattern yourself? Did you do it from scratch? Did you use a pattern? How did you approach it?
So the so it's an animal on there. So it's a panda, and so we drew it out, and it's an RCMP, which is the Mountie Police in Canada, the
Okay,
ones with
cool.
the horses and the hats and the red
Yeah.
coats. So we drew that out first and then enlarged it so that we could transfer it onto using carbon copy paper onto the wood. And then at that time, my hands weren't better yet. So Matthias, my partner, he went through with the saw. And I mean, the amount of resistance that you encounter, like I certainly couldn't do it at that point. It would have But yeah, so
Yeah,
as you're saying, it's not easy.
No, it's something I highly respect. So that's a very, very cool project. I love that. And I love that you've been able to do it together. That's really, really fun. Very cool. Where can I ask where you met your partner? I always love a meeting
So
story.
yeah, so we actually met online.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's been really neat because there's so many things that we have in common that I don't think we could have met any other way. Like we don't run in the same circles, but there's just so much overlap. But we didn't have any mutual friends, and so we're bringing people together that otherwise
I
wouldn't have
love
met.
that. That's so great. I have a few friends who, are, various friends, even a family member who you met via Tinder, met online. And I think, I don't know, it's just a part of life now these days. And I think it's really cool that, Stitch People is an online community of people, and people are making real friends and flying to visit each other and setting up chats, to Zoom one another. And just because you make friends over a shared interest or, a shared, I don't know, humanitarian effort or, whatever it is that brings you together online, like why couldn't that shared interest that you participated online be something that you can bring into the real life? I think that's really, really cool. And were you like when you connected online, did you find that you were in the same kind of area?
Yeah, so we were probably only about 5 kilometers, so that's just over 3 miles apart. So
That's wild. That's really my sister and her husband, a very similar story. They met online, went to high schools in like neighboring towns. They were at the same college at the same time. They might have even had a class together, but one of those big like 250 student like American history things. But like just that they were always so close to each other's orbit and yet never quite there until they met online. So, it's I love that. That's great. Wonderful. Well, tell us a little bit more about Stitch People. What's like your favorite portrait that you've ever made, and what's the story behind that? I mean, you've already told us a couple, like for your aunt, or using the I guess ultimately your biological grandmother's book to kind of embellish your. I'm assuming that was a portrait
it
of some
ended up
kind.
it's hopefully going to be a keychain,
Oh,
but
nice.
so it's just really I used your flower one,
Oh yeah, floral
with the
motif.
wagon wheel and all.
Yep.
Yes, the floral motif
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
So it's really tiny. I don't think I could have fit a head or anything
Gotcha,
on
gotcha.
there. Yeah.
Love that.
But my favorite portrait, I'd say I haven't made as many as people in the group, but the handful that I've done, I've learned different skills and techniques with each. So I feel like they each have their own special characteristics that make them a favorite for that time. I think I'd
Yeah.
shown you guys in the sip and stitch the one with the beading I was working on. So that was really exciting to
Yeah,
learn about
that's
beads.
right. Yeah, I
And
was going to
then
say, I
one of
feel like you've showed us quite a few things over the various sip and stitches and did you do the Halloween house too?
no.
Were you on that one? I'm trying to remember. Like I said, I feel like I see your name crop up all over the place. So yeah, I mean, you're always showing us what you're up to, which is, it's always fun that you've always got something in the works. Do you tend to work on one project at a time, or do you like to have kind of multiple things going?
So it might be one cross stitch project and maybe like a card or painting or something that's going on the side, but
Sure,
usually
sure.
just one cross stitch project because I usually have someone in mind. So I want to make sure I meet the deadline.
Right, like for an anniversary or birthday or something. Yeah,
Exactly.
cool. So have you been making portraits for Christmas coming up, or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or holidays, whatever it is?
So I didn't do any for Christmas. I didn't feel like I'd be able to make enough because often what happens is if I do something crafty at Christmas, then if one or two people get one, then others are like, how come I didn't get one? So everyone has to get one
Like
at the
all or
same
nothing,
time. Yeah. So
which
this
turns
year,
into like a year-long process if you want to get
exactly, I should have
everybody.
started, yeah, quite some time
Totally.
ago. But this year I'm giving people, um, we, we customize shirts with pockets on them.
Oh,
So like
fun.
that's easier for everyone because otherwise it'd be 100 hours per project and have to start it. And
Totally.
I just found out about Stitch People, so
Well, there you go. Maybe next year. Maybe next year.
exactly.
What are you working on now? What have you got going?
Um, so I have a small portrait that I'm working on for a friend. not too far along yet. Um,
Oh, fun.
um,
It looks
so
like just one figure so far.
yeah, it's going to be two and a dog. Two,
Nice.
and then I want to put like a bit of a background.
Perfect. What's it going to be? And are you making it from scratch? Are you kind of paving your own way with the pattern?
What do you mean?
Like with the background pattern, are you creating something specific and like you have to make your own pattern to replicate it, or is it just sort of like generic, like a tree or something?
Oh, so it'll be a combination of both of those. I want to put their first home, so it's a condo
Oh,
building. So
nice.
the condo building behind, so that'll be customized. But
Perfect.
then I want to look at some patterns with some lavender in the front.
Perfect. Love that. I love how lavender looks. The little like sprigs embroidered. So pretty. So pretty.
Yeah, it's my
Um
friend's favorite, so I'd love
oh,
to
I love it.
incorporate that.
Perfect. It's nice when people have preferences. I find there are people in my life, I don't know if this is true for you, who are both like they're hard to buy presents for, they're hard to buy like presents like birthday or Christmas presents, or I find that trait translates into hard to stitch into a portrait because it's like I don't know if they really have a favorite color. I don't really know if they have like a favorite accessory or item that they'd want in the portrait with them. I don't know that like it's really nice when it's like, oh, my friend loves lavender. So it's like, boop, easy peasy. And it's like personalized, ready to go. And she'll go, oh, I love it. That's a great idea to just add an extra level of thoughtfulness, for if somebody has a favorite, why not put it in?
Well, part of the reason I also want to make her this portrait is so she actually ordered Stitch People portraits long before I even knew about it. And so
Awesome.
that one day I sent her a picture of what I was working on. She's like, oh, did you know that I purchased these? And then sent a whole bunch
Awesome.
of photos of Stitch People portraits she'd ordered from people over the
That's
years. So
so cool. How fun. Worlds colliding. I love it. And now you can be her go-to portrait stitcher for all her portrait needs. I love it. Well, Krystal, tell us more about you. Do you work during the day? Do you have kids? Do you have pets? What like fills up your life? What takes up your time?
sure. So I work as a research assistant for a hospital and university. And I have a cat and I live with my partner. And
Awesome.
yeah, so the cat's very fluffy and I spend a lot of time hanging out with him because I work from home.
Oh,
So
nice. So
yeah, the
what
two
kind
of
of
us.
research? Is it like medical, scientific?
Yeah, so both, yes.
Awesome. I guess those two
It's
go hand in hand.
um, so it's the social determinants of health. So I work on questions related to health. And so during COVID, I worked on some stuff related to that. And
That's right.
yeah,
Okay, I'm remembering our last sip and stitch. I feel like we got into a bit of a chat with you and Amanda McCurley, who we did a podcast interview with last season. She has a background in social work. And I feel like, was it the two of you who are talking about, was
I
it like
think she
mental
might have
health and
mentioned a movie.
homelessness or something
Well,
like that?
I did mention that, and
Okay.
I'm not sure if she was the lady that mentioned there was
Yes,
a
there was a
film.
documentary, I
Yes,
think. Yeah.
yeah. So at that time, I had been in Northern Ontario working with young adults, and some of them were experiencing homelessness.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. So what is like I don't know how to ask this question. So you're doing research, you're a research assistant, you're collecting data. What does it look like when you and your team have like succeeded in doing your job? Like what are the ripple effects? Like with Stitch People, it's very transactional. Like I develop patterns, I composite them into a book that looks really nice. We have the book printed, people can buy the book. Like, ta-da, we did our job. What does it look like? What are the ripples that occur after a project that you and your team undertakes? And when do you determine that something is finished and what happens to your research when it's finished, and how does that
sure.
disseminate and make change? Like what's the best case scenario of success for you?
So I used to work for one research lab, so I feel like this might be the best example to give for to answer your question. So I don't work with this research lab anymore, but so that one, the results were very tangible. You could concretely measure, had you achieved what you set out to do? So that one was very much developing interventions for various medical conditions. So if it was trying to get doctors to implement checking diabetics' feet to determine whether, how much their diabetes had progressed. So in that case, it would be if you had succeeded in getting X amount of doctors to incorporate these checks.
Yeah, they do certain steps at a certain point in the process, and that
And I mean,
you're
they
able
only
to
have X
determine.
amount of minutes. Exactly.
Yeah, and that like has an X percentage of likelihood of decreasing such and such a condition. Okay, so sort of easy to quantify as a kind of, are they doing it? Are they not? How are they doing it? How are they not? And,
And where can we
A
grow
plus
to?
B equals C kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. So when we read headlines that's like new data shows that, oh gosh, like what's the shocking one I read the other day? Oh, I read like microplastics are like the big headline thing right now. I feel like I'm seeing that all over. Maybe it's just my Instagram feed because I keep clicking on them. But I read this crazy thing that's like research shows that most people consume, geez, it was like they quantified the amount of plastic that the average person consumes in a year. And it was like a laundry detergent bottle's worth of plastic goes through every human system a year or something like that. Just in like tiny, tiny particles that are worked into our food or whatever. So is that the kind of thing that like your team might tackle? And it's like because of teams like you that we get that information? Is that? I don't know if I'm making sense.
The
I'm just
information,
fascinated.
that type of information or that type of presentation of research, yes, but not that particular question related to plastics.
Yeah. That's a different research and development team at a different university, I'm sure. But okay, that's really, really cool. Well, thank you for helping doctors check diabetes patients early on and, survey the people that you are for positive change in the world. That's really, really cool. Are you part of a team that similarly, do you kind of have one project going at a time, or is your team always sort of handling multiple pathways of research and inquiry that you're kind of pumping out all at once?
So for myself right now, I had a tricky health history. So more recently, it's been just for me a single project at a time,
Okay.
just to keep things more manageable. But yeah, right now it's the same research project I had mentioned where we were up north. So that one,
Yeah.
it takes up most of my time.
Cool. That is really neat. What is your background like that's what you went into? Did you study medicine? Did you study political science? Like what does somebody study to sort of lead into a career path like you have?
So I actually did my undergrad in something completely different. And then, so I'd done that in languages and economics.
Nice.
And then I worked in social services for a number of years. And then I did a master's in sociology, but specifically related to health questions.
Wow.
So that, yeah.
That's really cool. I have a cousin who did public relations masters, but in specific emphasis to public health. So I think it's cool how you can sort of focus in on certain subjects and areas within a greater scope of study. So languages. Okay, so do you speak multiple languages?
So I speak English, French, and I mean, my Spanish isn't as strong as it used to because I used to work in Spanish in Ontario. But then when I moved to Quebec, Montreal, Quebec, I use it a lot less. Only speaking English and French there. So
awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, you just mentioned languages in your undergrad and economics. That's hefty. I struggled in economics. I'm one of those like right brain, like creative, visual. I struggled with accounting. I struggled with economics. Like all the stuff that's probably secondhand for you. That's like data and quantifying and like do. I just gloss over. It's like if it's not in pictures, I did okay with statistics when it was graph based. Like when we were
there.
analyzing research and I could like see it. I think I'm a visual learner is what I gathered in that. So I just respect anybody who does anything with economics, anything with statistics. That's like, oh, I'm not worthy. That's pretty cool. So let me ask you about, I'm going to rewind a little bit back to cross stitching. because it is the Stitch People podcast. When you mentioned earlier that kind of with, each project you're learning new techniques, and you did one, had a lot of beading in it, this, that, and the other. What advice might you give for a newbie or a beginner, somebody new to Stitch People who's feeling overwhelmed? That's probably one of the biggest pieces of feedback we get is like, we have all these products and we have our book, but the book is almost 200 pages long. And we have all this information, but a lot of people really struggle with like, okay, but where do I start though? How did that look for you? And what advice might you have for anyone kind of just starting out with Stitch People?
Well, I think some of the advice that I've heard from other guests that may have been on the podcast and, just from my own experience, it's that, you'll learn as you go. And so it doesn't have to be perfect the first time, just kind of jump in and see where that leads. And I know I've heard some of the other people say, I wish I could go back and redo some of the portraits I did for people at the beginning.
Right.
When I first learned. And I feel that way about the first one I did, because at that point I didn't know that you have to have all your X's going in the same direction. And, now I look at it, but I'm still quite proud because it was the first one. And so, I'm happy that, my partner, he has it on the wall and like, that was the first one. So it's not quite right, but I'm still proud of it. So
good. I love that attitude. Because you should be. It's something to be proud of. The first of anything is rarely going to be like the best, most practiced version of a thing, but because it's the first of it, like that's pretty special. It's kind of marks a new chapter for you, which is really fun.
And maybe if you're going to gift it, don't gift it to someone who's super critical.
Fair. Know your audience, right? That's good advice. Yeah. Maybe do one for yourself. I always try to tell people, just stitch yourself, like just one little character, just stitch yourself. Cause like you said, oftentimes so much learning and context and figuring it out will occur from doing it. And at the end of the day, it's just some thread, even the fabric. The fabric's just a bunch of threads tightly woven together. And then you're just adding looser threads in the holes of it. And at the end of the day, if you really hate it, you can throw it away and start over because it's just some threads. I really love that about cross stitching is it's a really low pressure, low stakes hobby, as opposed to, I don't know, fixing up cars or like home improvement where there's like some pretty permanent things, semi-permanent things happening. It's like, cross stitch, start over. There's rarely a cross stitch emergency that can't be, reversed or fixed or start over, just fully starting over from scratch. But do you have any other hobbies that you enjoy, or are you a cross stitcher kind of through and through?
I enjoy anything crafty or artsy. So I recently discovered Copics markers. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
I'm going to Google it right now. Copix. Copic markers.
CS, but yeah. So they're alcohol-based markers.
Okay. They look really kind of thick.
So
I guess they probably come in different sizes. But
exactly, yeah. But whenever you see like an illustration or a marker drawing that looks really good, and you're like, how did they get that effect? It's those alcohol ones.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
What about it makes it look so good? Is it the consistency of like the ink, or is it in the brush or the application of it? Like, what would you say is
all of the above, including paper? Yeah. So different effects with different papers, different sizes of markers. And these ones can actually be blended. And so that's what people really like about them.
Wow.
Yes.
So you color in with blue and then you add yellow and it will blend into green kind of a thing, like instead of just a muddled brown mess. Like
and
markers
then there's
so
also
often do.
Like a clear one that you can add in case you want it to be even more green than what it's presenting as when you initially put the two colors down.
That sounds like magic, and I'm pretty sure I want to try it. That's really,
I think
cool.
You should.
Is there an opportunity to combine these two things? Like, could you use those markers on Aida fabric?
That I haven't tried yet. I started off with watercolor to see what it would look
You've
like
done
because
the
I felt like that could,
watercolor.
yeah, because I
I
knew that I
love
could
it.
wash it out if I didn't like it. But I
Fair.
wasn't sure how well this would wash out, but probably.
Interesting. Okay, so you've
Actually,
tried
yeah, you've been
watercolor.
doing your project with the space guy. I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it could
yeah.
add some
That
extra dimension if you wanted.
right. Yeah, that one was acrylic on paper, and then I tried to poke through the paper and stitch right on the paper, but the paper was too weak. So then I was able to do the moon on the paper directly, but now I'm just stitching the little guy and I have to cut him out and put him on. I have to finish him and cut it. Our sip and stitch is coming up this week. And our last month's sip and stitch, I was working on this astronaut. I haven't touched it since. I have not had a chance to like sit down and finish that little guy. This is my 6-month-long
Fair.
project. It happens to the best of us, I guess. So what are some of the most interesting or unique, fun, I don't know, whatever word you want to use, techniques that you've used while cross stitching? So you've tried watercolor on fabric, you've tried beads. Tell us all about kind of what led you to try these things and how it went, if you have any advice.
So the watercolor one, so definitely what I learned from that is you don't want to use a dark color because then you can't see
Ah,
the holes too well after. Well, I mean, maybe for others they might succeed in
sure.
doing it, but for me, I
It
found
does
that a
make
bit
it
challenging
tricky.
after. Yeah.
Like because
Um,
Ada, you can get it in black and you can get it in navy, and it looks really cool. I find it very difficult to stitch.
yeah, and this was actually on linen because I felt like since
Oh
it
wow,
had the smaller holes, it
yeah,
might absorb the watercolor a little bit better.
sure.
I didn't actually try it on the Ada, so that may not be the case. Maybe Ada.
Well, but the linen, I think, would make it even more difficult because then you have to be really precise with the needle to
Oh
make
yeah.
sure that your squares are the same. Oh gosh, that's tricky. That's levels of tricky. Good for you. Did you finish that project or did you give up?
Oh no, I finished that
Oh,
one.
good
It
for
was
you. Good for you.
actually a friend. So when he was proposing to his now wife, he had called for us to take photos during the proposal,
Mm.
and unfortunately, I was on a train traveling, and so he didn't actually have anyone to take photos while he was proposing. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I could capture this with a portrait, and so he could still have
Oh,
something to remember that day.
that's so sweet. Oh, I love that. And I will plug the reason I love Stitch People portraits to capture a memory is because a photo is literal and you look at it and you're like, oh, yeah, that time I got engaged. How nice. And you don't think twice about it. But with a portrait, it forces you to remember because it's not a literal photograph. Like you have to stop and think about it for a minute, which I think is more meaningful. So I submit that you were helping him capture that memory even better because now he has to remember instead of just look at it. That's really great. So, what was that scene like? Where did he propose? What did you recreate there?
So in Montreal, there is a church that sits at the top of the city. So Montreal's on a mountain, on an island, and so this church is at the very top. And so at sunset, he went and he proposed to her with the sunset as the background, and
Oh,
on the steps of this church, like the kinds that you have to climb forever to get to the top. So
that's pretty
yeah,
romantic. That's pretty great. And I bet it made for a gorgeous portrait. We'll have to have you send some I'm assuming you took pictures.
I did. Yeah.
Okay, good. I was going to say, you'll have to send some pictures and we'll post it on the blog when we release your episode so we can see how it turned out. So that was your watercolor one. Have you done watercolor since? Did you have beads on that one as well? Or did you do beads for a different thing? Tell us
So
everything.
yeah, the beads were for another one. That one was actually on black fabric, so that I learned about how to stitch on darker
Yep.
color. That time was Ada because I regretted using the linen with it
Yeah,
being
yeah,
dark
yeah.
the last time. So, um, but the beading, I don't. I had these earrings that I received as a present, and they were kind of firework shaped, and then they inspired me. I'm like, wait, I remember this moment with fireworks for our childhood nanny, and so that was what I wanted to create with the beads. So
That's right, the fireworks. And that, I feel like did you finish that last sip and stitch or were you just working on it?
I was doing
finishing
the,
it.
I don't know what you call it at the back where you put the fabric to close it.
Oh, yeah. Just finishing. I don't know. I don't know if there's a
Okay.
technical term for it.
Yeah,
I was just like, finish in the back. Cool. Awesome. And have you had a chance to give that away yet?
I did. Yeah.
How'd it go?
She loved it.
Oh, good. That's always,
Yeah.
I love that part. Not the, I don't need to be told like, wow, good job. But I just love to see it dawn on somebody's face, like what it is and how great, like just, I don't know. That's a great transaction of love, you know? So that's good. I'm glad she loved it. That's really nice. Wonderful. Well, okay, I've got to think. Let me just double check my questions. But otherwise, we can get to our rapid fire round pretty soon here. I'm going to just double check. One thing I do like to ask, and I don't always remember to ask, which is silly, but I like to ask kind of philosophical questions like, what does success mean for you? How would you define success in your life on a personal level?
Well, for me, I'd say that success is probably when someone's fairly content with where they're at. Not to say that they're not still ambitious, but it isn't that they're trying to necessarily compete or, claw their way or try and push someone else down in order to succeed. So it's just very much being content where they're at and
I
finding maybe
love
some
that.
small joys. Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of small joys do you find most fulfilling in your life? Like, what kinds of things do you like to notice that bring a smile to your face in the day to day?
Oh man, there's so many. Well, I'd never had any pets growing up, or I mean, we briefly had one for about 2 weeks, but now having this cat, I didn't realize to what point they're attuned to people's emotions. And
Yeah.
so, um, as I mentioned, I had some health problems. And so whenever I'd be really sick, the cat would actually come and guard me. And,
Oh, good kitty.
if I looked really sick, I feel like he wanted to look for help or find some way to communicate that to someone. So, yeah, I thought that was really
I
cool
love
that he was
that.
able to do that.
Well, and not only was he attuned to you, but you were attuned to the fact that he was attuned to you. Like the fact that you noticed. That's so great. Animals are special that way. I think they really do um, feed off of us and our energy, and that's the real deal. That's pretty cool. There's some documentaries about that. I think I've seen. I think they're on my list, like Inside of a Cat or The Mind of a Dog or
Yeah, I think
books. And
Netflix had a couple that were coming up on my
yes,
homepage.
exactly. And I was like, I'm a sucker. I will watch. It's on my list for sure. I can't remember the title, but
Me
are
too.
you
Yeah.
much of a movie or TV buff? Do you have any recommendations by way of shows or movies or audiobooks or podcasts or anything like that you like to do or watch
Um,
or anything?
so I mean, there aren't too many shows that I have on the go or movies, but I have a couple favorites. But aside from those, I mean, I actually once I went away to university, didn't have TV after that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
the last
I find it's definitely something that, some people are super into it, some people aren't so much. So I always like to ask and just see like, what do you like to do? So when you stitch, do you just kind of enjoy the quiet in your environment, or do you listen to music? Do you watch, do you do anything while you stitch or paint or do anything that you do?
so I do listen to podcasts.
Oh, nice,
Oh,
nice.
can you still hear me? I can't hear you.
Yeah. Oh no.
Oh,
Am I back? Uh-oh.
it's not synchronized with the sound.
Oh, weird. Well, okay. Well,
Okay. I can
hopefully we'll
hear
get
you,
back on
so
track.
that's fine.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry, so
what are
what
your
was your
favorite
question?
podcasts then that you like to listen to?
Um, so I listened to yours last season, and
Huzzah! Thank you. Thank you for your support.
I thought it was really neat to hear
Oh,
people's
good.
stories, and it's nice to know that other people are doing similar things.
Yeah.
Shared interest. Actually, during the pandemic, I started watching a show called Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Ah, okay. I have
I,
heard of
I
this. I've heard good things.
Yeah, I ended up really enjoying it, and so I listened to the podcast that goes with it now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's super random, but I'm enjoying it. And I have a couple others on by some authors that I like that I listen
Awesome.
to.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love when a I don't know what to call it, a show, I guess, but it crops up in other mediums. Like if there's books of a thing and you can also watch the movies or the show and then there's a podcast. Like I love being able to interact with a story across different mediums. I think that's a really cool thing that our 2022 world kind of offers in a way that, there didn't used to be a radio show for Cheers or Seinfeld, back in the
Yeah.
day. Like now we can do podcasts or we can have YouTube shorts of a show, in between seasons that's on Netflix or Hulu or something. So I don't know. I think that's really, really cool. And I've heard really good things we've had so many people recommend Avatar: The Last Airbender to us. It is not
Oh,
like James
really?
Cameron
Okay.
Avatar. For those who've not heard of it, not the same Avatar, but yeah, we've had a number of people like, you guys might really like that. So,
Yeah, I was surprised. I didn't expect to like it. And the first couple of times, so a friend had come to help take care of me. And, we put it on and, I'd be in and out of sleep. And so eventually I was awake and I'm like, let me actually pay attention. And it was, yeah, it's really good.
cool. I love that. Well, hey, there's another resounding endorsement. I love that. Very cool. Okay, well, I'm going to rapid fire you some favorite things questions. We just got, it sounds like, maybe favorite or one of your favorite series. Do you have a favorite color?
Pink,
Pink. Light pink, dark pink, hot pink? What kind of pink? Any specific shade or
light
hue?
pink.
Okay, love that. Favorite food?
Mm, maybe pizza.
Yes, who doesn't love pizza? Do you have a favorite treat or dessert? I'll put them all into the same category, like candy, dessert, any sort of treat.
Cheesecake.
Oh man. Okay, chocolate cheesecake, vanilla cheesecake.
I have a problem with dairy, so I'll take what I can get, whatever
Fair.
matches my dietary restrictions.
I always joke that I'm I'm lactose skeptical. I'm not straight up intolerant, but it's like you never know. It's always a shot in the dark with dairy, so can relate. Do you have a favorite vacation destination?
I'd say when I was younger, I would have probably said Marseille or Saint-Tropez, but now I'm pretty open to anywhere.
Cool. Do you have a bucket list dream vacation or dream destination that you haven't traveled to, but like, man, if you could go tomorrow, you would just take off and take a plane to somewhere?
Tonga.
Awesome. That's a great. I would go. You know what? I'll put that at the top of my list. Why not? I'll go to Tonga. That sounds awesome. Any particular reason?
So up until about, I think it was 2010 or 2011, it was the first place that the sun rose every day. And so it was where time started. And then at
I
that
just
time,
got full body
Samoa,
chills.
yeah, Samoa would have been the last place the sun set. So, if you could visit both, it'd be
Is
like,
the line like right between the two of them then?
at
Like,
that time. Now I forget, it's shifted a little bit, but I think it's still close enough to the first place. So,
wow.
where time
That's
began and where
really
time ended.
cool.
Yeah.
Man. Oh, I love that. That's so like meta. I love it. Okay. Do you have a favorite animal?
Pandas.
Oh, well, hey, then that puzzle that you made, perfect fit for both you and your friend's little girl. And okay, are you a beach person or a mountain person?
Both depends on the season, I think.
Okay, what's your favorite season?
Summer.
Solid.
But I mean, I like all of them.
Summer.
I like all of them.
I
mean, in our case, it gets to minus. Yeah, it gets to minus 30 in the winter. So,
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite like minus 30 days?
Sport? Either favorite sport you like to watch or favorite sport you like to play? And sport is a very loose term. You could say like, oh, I like running. Like, do you have a favorite physical activity?
I do like running. Yeah.
There you go.
But I do enjoy watching soccer.
Okay. Were you watching the World Cup recently?
I did, yeah.
And did Canada play? Were you rooting for?
Yeah, but I mean, it was brief.
Okay. I was like, who were you rooting for? France? Were you rooting for France? Because you speak French and you like visiting France?
I mean, I would have been happy either way.
Sure.
Both teams are good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was like, that might have been a sensitive, sad subject for you. I saw this great video online of it was like a side by side, or I think it was a diagonal cut of a group of people in Argentina watching the World Cup, a group of people in France, like in real time, their reactions. And this crowd just goes wild. And this other crowd just like gets all quiet. And I was like, oh no, that's the saddest side by side I've ever seen. You know,
I think they still had moments to be proud of.
Oh, for
with
sure.
the hat trick and everything. So
no,
yeah.
It's good. Oh, fun. Well, then I'm glad that you enjoy that. That's really great. Well, Krystal, do you have any final thoughts, comments, questions, anything you'd like to share before we sign off?
I mean, I think I've answered all your questions, so I'm not sure.
Well, some people are like, oh, I want to just tell people about blah, 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 blah. So just want to give the opportunity for that. Where can people interact with you if they want to be your friend? Are you on the Facebook community a lot? Do you stick to Instagram? What's kind of your favorite places to connect?
So I have Instagram, and so my Instagram handle is K10S23. So KTENNESS 23. Yeah.
Perfect. And we'll link that in the blog post for this episode. And it's been so much fun getting to know you. I'm so glad to know you better, especially like I said, I see your name pop up all over, and we've got the Sip and Stitch, I think, tomorrow. So that'll be fun to hang out if you can make it. No pressure. But thank you so much for joining. And I hope everybody feels like they know you better like I do. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Didn't I tell you Krystal is just about the coolest person? I love chatting with her. I love getting to know her. You never know someone's story until you sit down and get to know them. I love her take on success. Honestly, for those who know me, it's not going to surprise you. Personal contentment is something that I strive for and I think about a lot. So I love the simplicity of her take on that success doesn't mean that you've achieved something that you can stop, trying for your goals. But success is about appreciating the moments along the way. I think that's really insightful and really important. We'd love to know what your takeaway is on this podcast. Let us know, comment on the podcast post on Instagram or start a discussion in the Facebook group. We'd love to hear from you anywhere and everywhere. We'd also really appreciate, I'm sorry we always have to ask, if you could like our podcast, subscribe to the podcast. It helps with our visibility and our numbers and all of those algorithms and things that run our world here in 2023. Can't believe it's 2023. Anywho, thank you so much for listening. Thanks for enjoying Krystal and enjoying conversations with Stitch people like you. We'd love your rating and subscription, and we'd love for you to check out everything we have going on at stitchpeople.com. We have so many new products, subscriptions, patterns, all sorts of things. I also want to thank each of you in the Stitch People community for your support of us and your positive and cooperative encouragement of one another. It is the best place online, and I love seeing what everybody does and seeing how everybody helps each other and rallies around one another